I never imagined I'd be the guy with security cameras plastered all over my property. Growing up, I figured that kind of setup was for paranoid types or folks living in rough neighborhoods. But 6 months after moving into Lakewood Estates, I realized those cameras weren't a luxury. They were a necessity, not because of burglars or vandals, mind you, but because of something far more relentless. Karen Wilcox, the president of our homeowners association. It all started the day I pulled into my new driveway. I'd barely unloaded the first box on the moving truck when Karen appeared, striding across the cul-de-sac with the confidence of a drill sergeant. She was a petite woman mid-50s, with a blonde bob so perfectly styled it could have been sculpted from plastic. In her hands was a 3-ring binder, thick as a phone book, which she thrust at me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to Lakewood Estates," she said, her voice clipped and authoritative. "This is your copy of the HOA bylaws, all 178 pages. I suggest you memorize them. I run a tight ship here, and we don't tolerate rule breakers." I took the binder, nodded politely, and figured that was the end of it. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. Designing security systems is my bread and butter, so I'm used to dealing with details and rules. But Karen's binder wasn't just a set of guidelines. It was a declaration of war. At first, I didn't think much of her. I was too busy settling in, turning my garage into a sanctuary where I could tinker with electronics projects on weekends. I'm a meticulous guy. Tools hung neatly on pegboards, shelves labeled with precision, floor so clean you could eat off it. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It's just who I am. But Karen, she had other plans. Within a month, I noticed her prowling the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, measuring grass height with a ruler and snapping photos of anything she deemed infraction. She'd stop by houses unannounced, peering into yards like a self-appointed sheriff. It was unsettling, but I figured I'd stay off her radar if I kept my nose clean. So I installed a full security system, doorbell camera, motion sensors, the works. Not out of paranoia, but because something about Karen's obsessive enforcement made my skin crawl. The garage got extra attention. Motion-activated cameras linked to my phone, silent alarms, the whole 9 yards. My equipment was valuable: oscilloscopes, soldering stations, custom circuit boards, and I wasn't taking chances. Plus, I liked the peace of mind. Little did I know how soon I'd need it. The trouble kicked off with a violation. Notice slipped into my mailbox. It was typed on official HOA letterhead, signed by Karen herself, claiming my garage door had been left open for excessive periods of time. According to her, this violated a bylaw about maintaining aesthetic purposes and neighborhood security. I flipped through the binder, found the rule, and saw it defined excessive as overnight or when the homeowner was absent. My Saturday afternoon tinkering sessions, door open while I worked inside, didn't fit the bill. I wrote a polite but firm response, citing the exact bylaw and its terms, and dropped it in Karen's mailbox. She'd insisted all HOA correspondence go straight to her. No emails allowed. Digital communications lack accountability, she declared at a neighborhood meeting, her tone dripping with self-righteousness. I figured she'd back off once she saw I knew the rules better than she thought. 3 days later, another notice arrived. This one claimed that visible storage of non-automotive items in my garage violated Section 23.4. Back to the binder I went. Section 23.4 only banned storage visible from the street when the garage door was closed. When open, the rule just said it couldn't be a hazard or eyesore. My pristine workbench, tools aligned, no clutter, was neither. I started to suspect Karen was making this up as she went along, bending the rules to fit her vendetta. This time, I requested an in-person meeting. I showed up at her house with printed photos of my garage from the street, annotated with the relevant bylaw sections. Her dining room table was covered in HOA paperwork, and she sat there like a judge presiding over a trial. I laid out my case calmly, pointing to the photos and the text. Her face grew redder with every word, her lips pursing tighter. "The spirit of the rules is what matters," she snapped, her voice rising. "Your garage has been reported by concerned neighbors as not being primarily used for vehicle storage." "Which neighbors?" I asked, keeping my tone even. I'd like to address their concerns directly. That information is confidential, she shot back, shuffling papers nervously. As our president, I protect the anonymity of community reporters. I didn't buy it. There were no concerned neighbors, just Karen on a power trip. Well, since we can't agree on interpretation, I said, maybe we should bring this up at the next HOA meeting for clarification. Her eyes twitched just slightly. That won't be necessary. I'll review your documentation and get back to you. I left her house thinking I'd won a small victory. A week passed without another notice, and I let my guard down. I dove back into my weekend project, building a custom drone for a friend's agricultural business, keeping the garage as spotless as ever. Maybe Karen had finally backed off. Then came that fateful Saturday. I popped out to grab groceries, expecting to be gone an hour tops. Halfway through the checkout line, my phone buzzed with security alert. I opened the app, and my stomach dropped. There, on the live feed, was someone in my garage. At first, I thought it might be a glitch, or maybe a neighbor's kid who'd wandered in. But when I zoomed in, I saw it. The blonde bob, the floral dress, the unmistakable air of entitlement. Karen Wilcox was inside my garage. She was wearing latex gloves, like some CAI wannabe, opening drawers, lifting tools, and snapping photos with her phone. She brought a clipboard, jotting notes as she went, moving with the calm assurance of someone who thought they belonged there. The timestamp showed she'd been at it for nearly 15 minutes already. My heart pounded as I watched her rifle through my workspace, shifting items just enough to annoy my CD tendencies. I abandoned my cart and sped home, the security feed playing on my phone, mounted to the dashboard. By the time I hit my street, Karen had moved to my workbench, photographing drone components and scribbling more notes. The garage door was closed. She must have entered through the side door. I parked on the street, noticing faint tool marks around the lock, and called a non-emergency police line. I'm watching someone who's broken into my home on my security cameras right now, I said, keeping my voice steady. She's in my garage, going through my stuff. I've got clear video evidence. The dispatcher told me to stay clear until officers arrived, which I agreed to. I kept the feed running, watching Karen shake her head disapprovingly at my soldering iron, oblivious of the 3 cameras recording her every move. The silent alerts had been pinging on my phone since she tripped the first motion sensor. 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled up, lights off. I met the officers on the sidewalk, showing them the live feed. That's Karen Wilcox, the HOA president. I explained. She's been in there almost half an hour, no permission, nothing. Look, those are gloves she's wearing. One officer raised an eyebrow. HOA disputes aren't usually police matters, sir. This isn't a dispute, I said firmly. This is breaking and entering. I never gave her permission to step foot on my property, let alone inside my house. There's forced entry on my side door, and I've got footage of the whole thing. The officers exchanged a glance, and the senior one nodded. Let's go talk to her. I hung back as they approached the side door and knocked. Police, open the door, please. No response. They knocked harder, and the door swung open. Karen stood there, clipboard in hand, her expression flickering from confusion to indignation. Officers, what seems to be problem? She asked, straightening up like she was about to lecture them. Ma'am, do you have permission to be in this residence? The senior officer asked. Karen didn't miss a beat. I'm conducting an official HOA inspection. As president of Lakewood Estates, I have the right to inspect properties for compliance. Do you have documentation of that right? Or a key from the homeowner? He pressed. Her confidence faltered just for a second. The bylaws give the HOA board authority to ensure community standards are maintained. This homeowner has received multiple violation notices and has been uncooperative. The younger officer turned to me. Sir, did you give this woman permission to enter your home or provide her with a key? Absolutely not, I said, crossing my arms. I've got footage showing her tamper with that lock and entering when I wasn't there. She's been through every drawer and cabinet in my garage. Karen's face flushed. The bylaws clearly state. Ma'am, the senior officer cut in, HOA bylaws don't override state trespassing laws. I'd like to see the document you think gives you the right to enter private residences without permission. She flipped through her clipboard, hands trembling slightly. I don't have it with me, but Section 42 clearly states a board can inspect properties for violations. This garage has multiple issues that needed documentation. Regardless of any HOA rules, the officer said patiently, you can't legally enter someone's home without their consent. That's breaking and entering, a criminal offense. The reality hit her like a freight train. Her eyes widened and she clutched the clipboard tighter. This is ridiculous. I was doing my job as HOA president. The community depends on me to maintain standards. The officers asked her to step outside. Her hands shook as she complied, still gripping her precious clipboard. The senior officer turned to me. Sir, can you show us the footage and any damage to your door? I led them to the side door first, pointing out the tool marks, scratches, and dents around the lock. Then I pulled up the footage, starting from when Karen approached the door, worked on the lock for several minutes, and slipped inside. The video rolled on, showing her methodical search. Gloves on, drawers opened, photos taken, notes scribbled. 28 minutes of undeniable evidence. Karen watched the playback, her face draining of color. Then she snapped, those cameras are an invasion of privacy. The HOA bylaws require approval for exterior security installations. The younger officer shook his head. Ma'am, homeowners can install cameras on their own property. And right now, those cameras have caught what looks like breaking and entering, and possibly attempted theft. Theft? Karen's voice hit a near shriek. I wasn't stealing anything. I was documenting violations. Then why the gloves, Karen? I asked quietly. And why'd you come when you knew I wasn't home? The senior officer stepped in. Ma'am, I need to advise you of your rights. He read her the Miranda warning as she stood there, stunned, the color gone from her cheeks. They escorted her to the cruiser, her hands trembling as she climbed in. Neighbors started peeking out of their houses, drawn by the quiet drama unfolding in my driveway. This is all a misunderstanding. Karen called out, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. I was conducting official HOA business. I gave my statement to the officers, handing over digital copies of the footage. They told me Karen would likely face charges, breaking and entering, trespassing, maybe even attempted burglary, given the gloves and premeditation. As they drove off, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. 2 weeks later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. The room was packed, tension thick in the air. Karen sat off to the side, stiff and silent, no longer at the head of the table. The vice president took charge, explaining that Karen had been removed from the board after her arrest. She cut a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for legal fees, community service, and a restraining order keeping her 100 feet from my property. When the floor opened for comments, Karen stood, her face a mask of indignation. This community will fall apart without proper leadership, she said, her voice quavering. I did what was necessary to maintain our standards and property values. No one responded. The room stayed silent, eyes avoiding hers. She grabbed her designer purse and marched toward the exit, heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. At the door, she paused, turning back to catch my gaze. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, anger, not sorrow. I hope you're satisfied, she whispered, barely audible. You destroyed everything I've worked for. With that, she pushed through the door and disappeared down the hall, the sound of her footsteps fading into the distance. The room erupted into murmurs as soon as she was gone. Neighbors speculating, some relieved, others still processing the downfall of their iron-fisted HOA president. A vote followed, and a new president was elected. A quiet guy named Tom who promised a lighter touch. The meeting adjourned, and I stepped outside into the cool evening air. My garage stood across the street, its door closed, its secret safe. Karen was gone. Her reign over Lakewood Estates ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. I walked home, unlocked the side door, now fitted with a sturdier lock, and flipped on the garage lights. The workbench waited, drone parts neatly arranged, ready for my next session. I smiled to myself, knowing I'd weather the storm. Karen might have thought she could control everything, but she'd underestimated one thing, me, and that, I decided, was the end of it.